So when I was just sitting there minding my own business, the other side came through and they said, Christine, remember that YouTube video that you made a while back where you were reviewing the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson? And I said, yes. And they said, remember how you were talking about your communication with Mark Foster's higher self and how you had a paranormal experience with him where you guys were getting frisky with each other? And I said, yes. And they said, well, we're going to need you to expand on that friskiness. And I said, what? I said, you want me to talk about my vajayjay again? And they said, yes. I said, well, the last time you had me talk about my vajayjay, I made a video called Protect Your Carnal Treasure, which was just talking about the importance of like safe sex and STDs and that kind of thing. I said, you want me to talk about my vajayjay again in a different capacity? And they said, yes. And I said, well, that seems kind of gratuitous, and it doesn't seem like it would teach anybody anything, and I'm not 100% sure that this is necessarily on brand. And they said, truth is our brand. And they said, unabashed, cold, hard truth is our brand. They said, all you're doing is telling a story. This is your truth. And we want you to tell this story. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll make this video. And, you know, I guess people are going to learn from this, but the divine wants total and complete transparency from me. So you guys are going to get it. So Mark Foster is the lead singer of Foster the People, and he is also my twin flame, divine complement, other half of my soul, and he's basically my soulmate on crack. Is he aware of this fact? Yes. The other side had me make a bunch of videos about him. And so I have reached out to him, not directly, but via YouTube. I was never allowed to reach out to him directly. They didn't want me to look like a stalker. But via YouTube, I reached out to him with my videos, but he never acknowledged my existence. I've never met him in person. Yeah. So just to be clear, the story that I'm about to tell you involves Mark Foster's higher self, which is the part of his soul that lives on the other side that's directly connected to the divine. His lower self is the part of his soul that lives in this earth plane in his mortal body down here with me. So I want to make it very clear that this video is not referring to his lower self, but his higher self, his oversoul, him in his most perfect form, his most angelic form, and his higher self is all-knowing. He's an angel. Okay, he lives in the light with the divine. Okay. So I just want to make that clear. I know the concept of the higher self is a little difficult to grasp, and it's kind of disturbing to people because it's kind of like, well, there's essentially two of you. There's a part of your soul that lives on the other side, a part of your soul that lives on this side. It's like, what? You know, people don't like to hear that, but it's true. It's true. And when you meditate, that's actually what you want to connect with, is your higher self, because that's the part of your soul that's all-knowing and directly connected to the divine. So that's where you get your guidance from, your spirit guides, your higher self, etc. So back in February of 2015, I was communicating with Mark Foster's higher self. I have the ability to communicate with his soul. He sends me thoughts, feelings, sounds, and images, and I can communicate with him. It's easy to do so because he is my twin flame, so we have that soul connection. So the fact that he's the other half of my soul communicating with his higher self is actually really easy and effortless. But in February of 2015, Mark Foster's higher self showed up, and he mentioned Valentine's Day. And the reason he brought it up is because he knows that I love him, he loves me, and he knows how much I love Valentine's Day. So he wanted to give me a special treat. And being a single, lonely woman living in her condo with her cat, he wanted to make me happy. So he guided me to a store in Culver City called A Touch of Romance. And I'd never been there before. I walked in and I turned to like 10 shades of red because I was totally embarrassed. It was like an erotica store with lingerie and sex toys. And so walking in, I was pretty embarrassed and kind of uncomfortable. But his higher self just kept like sending me love the entire time, like calming energy and love. And, it didn't feel seedy or, slimy. It felt very like loving and gentle and nurturing. That was the energy behind it. So he guided me to a section of the store that had dildos, fake peepees. And I had never owned a dildo before, never used one, never even used a vibrator. So I was like, whoa, like a little intimidated. And he kind of like made one stand out on the shelf. And it was like, that'll do. And so I picked it up and he guided me to purchase it. And so I bought this dildo and I went back to my condo and he had me take out a marker and write MF on the end of it. Had me write his initials on the end of this dildo. And he said, I want you to lay on your back, on your bed, close your eyes, and put this dildo inside of you and imagine that it's really me. Imagine that you are really feeling me inside of you. And that's what I want to simulate for you, is me inside of you making love to you. And while your eyes are closed and you're imagining this happening, I want you to imagine me on top of you, us making love in our master bedroom, in a house that we own. We are happily married, and our son Sammy is asleep in his bedroom down the hall. And we are very happy and in love and married and parents and making love to one another. And while he's saying this to me, he's like sending me images and feelings, and I'm just overcome with love and light and just encompassed in just this beautiful, warm, loving energy. And so I did that and I climaxed, and he said he loved me and that he wanted to give me pleasure, and I said that I loved him. And again, it just didn't feel seedy. It was a beautiful experience that just felt very loving and protective and just wanting to give me pleasure, just wanting to satisfy me. And so that continued. I kept doing that with him over and over repeatedly, and it was beautiful. It just felt like pure love and light. There was no dark energy around it at all whatsoever. The divine had no problem with it. If the divine had a problem with it, I would have gotten struck by lightning. I would have felt dark energy. I would have felt shame, anger, annoyance, whatever. There was no dark energy around this at all whatsoever. This is all pure love and light. And so that went from February of 2015 and continued into 2016. But eventually I stopped doing that because it felt inappropriate, because of what was going on with his lower self in this dimension. The part of Mark Foster's soul that lives in this dimension with me, his lower self, wasn't acknowledging my existence. As a matter of fact, he was doing the exact opposite, hanging around with like actresses, models, whatever, drinking, smoking, whatever. And so I had to be very, very careful, because it started getting emotionally confusing for me to have his higher self saying, I love you so much and I want to marry you and I want to be with you and I want to have babies with you, and to have his lower self not acknowledge my existence. That I felt like just was emotionally confusing for me and not good. So in September of 2016, I sold my condo and I had found the sex toy in my drawer tucked away. And so I, instead of packing it when I moved out of my condo, I actually just threw it away. I got rid of it. I just threw it in the trash. So I stopped using it, because I didn't think it was healthy. And I knew his higher self was coming from a sweet, loving, and gentle place. It wasn't from the dark at all. But based on what his lower self was doing, I just didn't want to anymore. I just couldn't do it. Again, the divine is okay with all of this. He's okay with all of this. So for all of those that, worry about pleasuring themselves, thinking that it's like shameful or whatever, it's not. The light is okay with you pleasuring yourself, just so you know. And for, but the reason I stopped is just because I didn't want to anymore. I saw his higher self as being separate from his lower self, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. But for those mediums out there who are aware who your twin flame is, and you have the ability to communicate with your twin flame's higher self, you can do this too, because you're mediums. So obviously their higher self has to be on board, because you have to be connecting with them as an entity. Otherwise you're just talking to yourself, right? But for those mediums out there who are able to communicate with their twin flame's higher self, you can do this as well, obviously. So no shame in that, especially since their soul is your truth, because they're the other half of it. So technically your connection is already blessed by the divine, because they're your twin flame and divine complement. So, even while I was writing this video, I was paying really close attention to my gut. Like, are you guys sure you want me saying all this? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? It's fine. It's fine. My gut is fine. There's no darkness surrounding this story, this situation, this video, nothing. Just cold, hard, unabashed truth. That's what they like. So when I look back on this, I see that his higher self loves me and wanted to give me pleasure, but I also have to protect myself from his lower self, because his free will decisions affect me and cause me pain and heartache. So I stopped doing it. And I guess another thing that the other side wants you guys to know is that higher selves can be sexual. If a higher self is in love with you and wants to be with you, regardless of whether or not their lower selves are cooperating, their higher self wants to make love to you. And there's a sexual energy behind it. Just loving, gentle, wanting to satisfy you, give you physical pleasure, be close to you, be inside of you. And it's a beautiful, very loving energy. But, if I walk into the lingerie department in Nordstrom's, Mark Foster's higher self will immediately show up. If I walk into a Victoria's Secret, his higher self will immediately show up. He'll show up when I'm in the dressing room trying things on and lend his opinion. Buy that, don't buy that. I love that. I don't really like that. He'll tell me what to buy. He's very, very opinionated when I'm trying on lingerie. And I just kind of start giggling. But again, it doesn't feel slimy or seedy or low class. It feels very, very nurturing. So yeah, again, anyone with, who has developed their connection to the other side, you can feel that energy showing up. You can feel their higher selves showing up. So this isn't just Christine specific. This is true for, other people who are able to connect with the other side as well. Anyone who's developed their intuitive abilities, mediumship, etc. So maybe that's why the other side is trying to use me as an example, because they're saying I'm not an anomaly. This isn't considered weird. This is just soul communication. Soul communication with a bit of pleasure mixed in. And they're saying there's no shame in that. So, now one of the things that happened when I was done, that was my story, by the way. That was pretty much, all I had to say with regards to my story. And speaking my truth and what the divine wanted me to share. But something surprising happened when I finished writing this video. Mark Foster's higher self showed up and started crying. And he was very appreciative and thought it was beautiful that I was making this video, because I was making myself vulnerable and sharing something very personal, and he appreciated that. So he showed up and started crying. And he apologized for his lower self not acknowledging my existence. And he's saying, you deserved better than this. You deserve to be treated better than the way he treated you. And so he was apologizing for him. And he just said, I'm really sorry. And he said that he's really frustrated because he loves me. He wants to be with me and he wants to marry me. And he said it's killing him because I am his heart, his home, and his truth. And I thought it was really interesting that he called me his home, because that's what I always used to call him, is my home. I said, I want us to get married, and I want to dance to Home by Depeche Mode at our wedding. because you're the other half of my soul and you are my home. And so when he called me his home, that was really deep and meaningful for me, because that's what I always used to call him. But it was interesting because the energy behind him was very serious, intense, determined. And he just says, you know, I won't give up until I'm with her. I'm not giving up. He said she just shared something very personal and I'm very protective of her. And so he's saying that my lower self is better at speaking truth than his lower self. And he's saying that he intends to change that. He intends for his lower self to start speaking his truth. And he said that he's going to increase his influence over his lower self. And he said, he just says that he loves me and he wants to be with me, and he's just very, very determined. And, you know, I guess you could say that I'm in love with Mark Foster's soul, but I'm in love with the part of his soul that doesn't treat me like a baby's diaper. I'm in love with his higher self, the part of his soul that I communicate with. So I do love him very much, and he loves me very much. So that also strengthens our connection. And he said, I love you too, and I'm going to marry you. And the energy, again, just feels very serious and just a lot of pressure and determination. And he's just saying, you know, I'm going to marry you. I'm coming for you. So that was our conversation at the end of me writing this video, which was unexpected for me. I didn't expect him to show up and to be so emotional and just so serious and intense and determined, but it is very flattering if you think about it. Yeah, he's saying, I can see her heart. I know how she feels about me, and that belongs to me. I think that's part of his determination, is that his higher self is all-knowing. So it's almost like he's coveting my heart, like that belongs to me. I can see it, I can feel it, I know that belongs to me, and it's mine, and I'm coming for it, kind of thing. So, I don't know, the energy feels pretty hot, actually, because it's just so intense and so determined. I'm like, it's kind of hot. It really is. So, that's my video. That's the story I had to tell. Hopefully you guys found it helpful and enlightening and, I don't know, inspiring in some way. But, yeah, you are able to make love to someone's higher self. You can simulate it. I guess that's one of the perks of being a medium, right, guys? So maybe I'm the poster girl for developing your intuition. Look what you can do with it, with the divine's approval, with the higher self's approval, right? Because you have to be respectful of their higher self. Like I said, they have to show up. It takes two to tango. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself. So, yeah. But that's my story. And again, I hope it sheds some light on how the other side works for you guys. And in the meantime, take care and be well. Thank you.